Okay, this is another little gem that I found that's a compilation of several authors. And this is actually a follow-up book to, I think I've already reviewed the first book in this series. I think that one was, I think it's mentioned in here. That one is, yeah, that's the one that mentions Project Bluebeam. So I'll link that at the end of this video. That one was from 2010. And this one is compiled and edited in 2015. And this is a good kind of primer on by a lot of good authors on mainly the subject of like mind control and things like that. This has of interest to this audience. I mainly got this because I was trying to run down more writing by Walter Boart, the author of Operation Mind Control. And his is considered still kind of one of the more definitive works on mind control. And it was originally written, his was published in, I think, 1978. And it's definitely not the first book, but it's one of the more comprehensive about kind of some of the darker side of the mind control technology that was, what was available in that time period. And so that was one of the reasons I found this, was doing a search for Walter Boart and what all he had written. And this is called Thanks for the Memory. Anyway, that's a good article. And also, this has a good article about Project Monarch, Nazi Mind Control by Ron Patton. So lots of other stuff in there too, but if you are a Walter Boart purist and you want to get some more of his material, this has a good article in here. Also, the article on Project Monarch is really good. And interesting with Monarch is, Monarch is mentioned in some survivor accounts of mind control. And again, that's one of those things where survivor accounts are like walking through a hall of mirrors, because you're talking to someone who is essentially, I think a good analogy for it is like talking to someone who has been through a fun house or like a magic show, but doesn't necessarily know they went to a magic show. So they know what they saw, and they're not lying to you when they tell you what they saw. But what they saw may not be what happened. I don't know if that's a good way to explain that or not. And I've used this analogy before describing some of the UFO phenomenon. You can have someone that is a witness, that is a sincere witness of something, and they can be telling you the honest truth of exactly what they saw, but what they saw might have been a deliberate deception to shape their view of things. So if you take a 5-year-old and he sees a magician cut a woman in half and put her back together, in that 5-year-old's brain, if he doesn't understand the context of the magic show, he's going to, if you ask him what he saw, he's going to say, I saw a woman cut in half and put back together. And he's not lying, that's what he saw. But that's also not what happened. And I think that's an important thing to remember when you're dealing with accounts, survivor accounts and things like that, because it's not that these people are lying, it's that you have to very carefully sift through their account of what happened and make sure that you're getting a proper accounting of exactly what happened. And sometimes that's the whole point of their account, is to deliver unbeknownst to them, but sometimes the point of their account is to pass along a narrative to an audience. So anyway, I'm a little off topic there, but there's some really good stuff about the Monarch program here, because again, Monarch is one of those programs that is really hard to pin down. You can find documentation on MK Ultra, things like that, but Monarch is one of those that's really elusive where official documentation is concerned. I don't know that anyone has ever found any official documentation proving the existence of Monarch. If somebody out there knows otherwise, please share in the comments, but I don't know that that has been proven in the strictest sense. One of the things, though, that he mentions in this article on Monarch is the Greenbaum lecture. And those of you, if you are unfamiliar with it, definitely look this up. He just talks about it briefly in here. But I think, as of this recording, I think you can find the Greenbaum lecture on YouTube. And it was recorded by a lecture by Dr. Corydon Hammond. And that's Dr. His name is spelled Corydon Hammond, Hammond. And he was a psychologist from the University of Utah. And as it says here, he delivered a stunning lecture entitled Hypnosis and MPD, Ritual Abuse at the 4th Annual Eastern Regional Conference on Abuse and Multiple Personality, June 25th of 1992. And the interesting thing is he gave a really good lecture about this. And after that, he kind of shut up and stopped speaking publicly about that. And this dude was no lightweight. He's if you look him up on Amazon, he's one of the definitive authors of a lot of major hypnotic texts for the psychological community. So anyway, highly recommend that. Oh, and it says, oh yeah, here you go. Shortly after his groundbreaking speech, he received death threats. Not wanting to jeopardize the safety of his family, Dr. Hammond stopped disseminating any follow-up information until recently. So definitely worth checking out. This is, again, it's one of those books. I like this. This is my kind of literature here because if I've got some downtime, I can easily read a chapter of this, and it's not the kind of thing where you have to read it all together. So anyway, definitely worth checking out. And again, yeah, especially if you're into things mind control. And I'll finish with a little anecdote just to make this, just to put this out there, because I have a lot of weird stories kicking around in my memory from just people I've interacted with over the years. And some really, this is one of those things, if you're paying attention and if you ask questions and you just sit back and listen and let people talk, you'd be surprised the people you may be interacting with or you may come in contact with that have involvement in some of these things like this. Years ago, this was about, I think 6 or 7 years ago, I met an individual who I mentioned some of this kind of stuff fairly casually just to kind of test the waters and see what they thought about this particular sort of thing. And this individual told me that he said it was funny that I had brought it up to him because his dad had been a claim to have been some kind of courier of information. And he didn't really know whether or not to believe some of this or not, because he was kind of on the fence on that side of it, because to him, his father had just descended into drug use, and his mind was pretty well fried, and he didn't really take much of what his dad said all that seriously. But when he and I got to talking about this, he said that his dad had told him that his job in the Navy was essentially a courier of information. And he always had to be in this group with these 2 other guys. And one guy specifically, it was his job to shoot the other 2 guys if they were ever compromised. And these guys were responsible for going and memorizing information and then being basically mental couriers of that information. And the guy that was telling me this didn't really know if any of that was even plausible or believable in the least bit, and told me, he just thought his dad was, out of his mind from drug use. And I found that really interesting, and I've met probably about 3 or 4 people with similar stories. some people that claimed they were the courier type person, and some people that knew someone in that capacity. And in one case, I met a guy who claimed to have witnessed some sensitive things happen, and claimed to have had his brain kind of professionally scrambled at Bethesda, Maryland, in a hospital, military hospital up there, which was really odd the way it was all described to me. And I'll try not to get too far down that rabbit hole in this video, but so those people are out there. Now, are those all made up stories? Could be, but I find it very interesting that a lot of these stories, if they are all manufactured, you somehow have these people coming up with stories that all have certain common elements to them, certain places, certain people, certain activities, certain techniques that are consistent throughout, even when you're hearing stories from people in totally different parts of the country. So I'm inclined to think that there's a lot more of that going on than you or I would like to think. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm going on quite the tangent, but that is Consensus Trance from 2015 by a host of authors there, which I'm unfortunately not going to credit. But if you look up the Dot Connector Library, and this is book 2 in that.